Tom Wilson stared through the massive observation window of Station Alpha, his rough hands pressed against the transparent material that separated him from the endless void of space. The construction worker from Earth couldn't help but marvel at the sight of 3 different suns casting their light across the bustling galactic sports complex. "Please step away from the barrier, Deathworlder," a nervous voice chirped behind him. Tom turned to face a small bird-like alien with iridescent feathers. The creature clutched its tablet tightly, taking 2 steps back for every step Tom took forward. "Sorry about that," Tom said, raising his hands in a peaceful gesture. "Still getting used to being up here. And you can just call me Tom." The alien's feathers ruffled slightly. "Yes, well, Mr. Tom, your registration for the Galactic Strength Championships has caused quite a stir. We've never had someone from your planet compete before." Tom noticed how the alien official carefully avoided using the term human. He'd been getting that a lot since arriving at the station. Earth had only joined the Galactic Federation 3 months ago, and most species still viewed humans as dangerous creatures from a death world. As they walked through the registration hall, Tom felt oddly light on his feet. The station's artificial gravity was set to the galactic standard, about 0.7 of Earth's gravity. He had to consciously remind himself not to bounce with each step. Around them, athletes from dozens of different species practiced with what they considered heavyweight equipment. A tall, blue-skinned being that looked like it was made of living crystal was struggling to lift what Tom estimated to be about 100 pounds in Earth weight. A group of spectators watched in awe, chattering in various languages as their universal translators worked overtime. Is that the weight category I'll be competing in?" Tom asked, trying to keep the surprise from his voice. The bird alien's eyes widened. "That's Ambassador Reed from the Blue Giant system. He's our current champion and is lifting near the galactic record." The official paused, mandibles clicking nervously. "Surely you don't think you can match that?" Tom decided it was better not to mention that he regularly lifted heavier loads during his morning workout. Instead, he just shrugged and followed the official to the registration desk. The main hall was a marvel of alien architecture, with sweeping curves and impossible angles that somehow worked together. Various beings stopped their activities to stare at Tom as he passed. He could hear their whispers, the word Deathworlder repeated in different alien tongues. At the desk, 3 different medical officers insisted on scanning him. Their devices beeped in alarm at his muscle density and bone structure. One of them, a gelatinous being with multiple eye stalks, actually backed away from the readings. "This can't be right," the creature burbled. "According to these scans, your muscular system is dense enough to support movement in nearly twice our standard gravity." "Well, that's pretty much what Earth is like," Tom explained. "About 1.1 times your gravity measurement system, if I remember the conversion right." The registration hall fell silent. Even Ambassador Reed, who had been practicing his lifts, turned to stare at Tom. The blue crystal being's faceted eyes reflected a mix of disbelief and concern. "And you live in that?" a voice from the crowd asked. "Born and raised," Tom replied with a slight smile. "It's actually taking some getting used to, being this light up here." The bird alien official looked at its tablet, then at Tom, then back at its tablet. "Mr. Tom, I believe we may need to convene a special committee before proceeding with your registration. No one from a gravity well as deep as Earth's has ever competed in our events." Tom just nodded, already wondering if he should have mentioned that he wasn't even particularly strong by human standards. He was just a regular construction worker who'd won a few local competitions back home. But looking at the worried faces around him, he decided that information could wait for another day. The adventure, it seemed, was just beginning. The emergency committee meeting about Tom's registration took place in a circular chamber with floating seats arranged in tiers. Tom sat in the center, feeling awkward as 24 alien officials argued about him as if he wasn't there. "It's completely unsafe," declared a tall alien with metallic skin. "A being from such a high-gravity world could accidentally kill someone with a simple handshake." But we cannot discriminate based on planet of origin, countered another official, this one looking like a walking plant with glowing flowers. It's against our charter. Tom watched as Ambassador Reed, the crystal-like champion, stepped forward to address the committee. The blue giant's crystalline form caught the light, sending rainbow patterns across the chamber walls. Perhaps, Reed's voice rang like wind chimes, we should let the human demonstrate his strength first. In a controlled environment, of course. The committee members muttered among themselves. Finally, the bird alien from earlier brought Tom a tablet. These are special waivers acknowledging your dangerous physiological capabilities. Please sign them. Tom read through the documents, trying not to smile at phrases like potentially catastrophic muscular density and extreme gravitational adaptation. He signed each form with careful strokes, conscious that everyone was watching his every move. Now, said the metallic alien, we will need to conduct more detailed medical scans to ensure there are no artificial enhancements. They led Tom to a medical bay filled with strange equipment. The doctors, a mix of different alien species, moved around him with obvious caution. Their scanners hummed and beeped, projecting three-dimensional images of his internal structure into the air. Fascinating, muttered one doctor, who looked like a floating cloud of purple gas. The skeletal reinforcement is completely natural. And look at the muscle fiber density. The cardiovascular system, added another, it's powerful enough to support movement in. This can't be right. Nearly twice our standard gravity. That's just how humans are built, Tom explained, trying to sound reassuring. We need to be strong to move around normally on Earth. The doctors exchanged worried looks. One of them accidentally brushed against Tom's arm and jerked away as if shocked. The surface density, it's like touching living metal. Ambassador Reed, who had been observing from the doorway, floated forward. His crystalline face was hard to read, but his voice carried a hint of concern. Tell me, human, Reed said, what is your profession on your world? I'm a construction worker, Tom replied honestly. Nothing special. Just build houses, lift materials, that sort of thing. The room fell silent again. Tom could almost hear their thoughts. If this was an ordinary human worker, what were their athletes like? Finally, the committee reached a decision. They would allow Tom to compete, but with special conditions. He would have to wear a bright red band marking him as a high-gravity species. He would need to maintain extra distance from other competitors. And most importantly, he would have to agree to stop immediately if the safety officers gave the signal. We will also, added the plant-like official, be installing additional reinforcement to the lifting equipment. Just to be safe. As Tom left the medical bay, he heard Ambassador Reed talking to another competitor. Don't worry too much. Even if the human is strong, he can't possibly have the technique and skill we've developed over years of competition. Tom didn't bother to correct them. They would find out soon enough that lifting heavy things was something humans had been doing for their entire history. After all, when you come from a world that's always trying to pull you down, you learn to push back pretty hard. The next day would be his first chance to show them exactly what a human could do. The training area of Station Alpha buzzed with activity as Tom walked in early the next morning. He wore the required bright red band around his arm, marking him as a high-gravity species. The other competitors gave him a wide berth, creating an empty circle around him wherever he went. Tom approached the practice weights, reading the numerical displays beside them. He had spent the previous evening studying the conversion charts between Earth measurements and galactic standard units. What he saw now made him pause. These can't be right, he muttered to himself, picking up what was marked as a heavy training weight. The object, a sleek metal bar with gravity modulators on each end, felt like it weighed no more than a broomstick to him. A small crowd gathered at a safe distance, watching as Tom easily moved through his warm-up routine. He kept the weights light by his standards, but even these simple exercises caused gasps from the onlookers. Look at how he moves, whispered one alien to another. no sign of strain at all. The station's science team had set up an array of scanning equipment around Tom's designated practice area. They tracked his every movement, their instruments creating detailed holographic readings that floated in the air. "Impossible," said the lead scientist, a tall being with 6 arms and glowing spots. "He's handling training weights meant for blue giant species as if they were toys." Ambassador Reed entered the training area, his crystalline form glinting under the station's lights. He stopped short when he saw Tom casually holding a weight that the blue giant would have considered a serious challenge. "Would you like to train together?" Tom offered friendly, trying to bridge the gap that had formed between him and the other athletes. Reed's faceted eyes studied Tom for a moment. "I think it would be better if we maintain the safety distance," he replied carefully. "But I would be interested in observing your technique." Tom nodded and continued his routine. He was careful not to show off, but even his most basic exercises drew attention. A group of young aliens had gathered by the entrance, recording everything on their devices. News about the Deathworlder's training session was spreading fast across the station. "Mr. Tom," called out the bird alien official from registration, hurrying over with a tablet. "Your warm-up activities are already exceeding our normal measurement parameters. Would you be willing to demonstrate your actual maximum capacity? For safety planning purposes, of course." Tom thought for a moment. "I wouldn't want to damage any equipment," he said carefully. "Maybe we should wait for the reinforced competition weights." The official's feathers ruffled in what Tom had learned was their species' version of nervous laughter. "The engineering team has been working all night to strengthen the competition equipment. They've used materials normally reserved for starship construction." As Tom continued his preparation, he noticed something interesting. The artificial gravity in the training area, which had felt so light before, now seemed even lighter. His body was adapting to the station's reduced gravity, making him effectively stronger than he would be on Earth. "Is everything all right?" asked a concerned official, noticing Tom's thoughtful expression. "Yes," Tom replied, a small smile forming on his face. "I just realized something. I think tomorrow's competition might be more interesting than anyone expects." He glanced at the competition weights being installed at the far end of the training area. The massive reinforced bars and gravity modulators looked impressive, but Tom already knew they wouldn't be enough. Not for what a human could really do in this environment. The real show would begin tomorrow, and Tom had a feeling he was about to change the galaxy's understanding of what strong really meant. The competition arena was packed. Beings from across the galaxy filled the massive circular space, their voices creating a buzz of excitement that echoed off the curved walls. Tom stood in the competitors' area, still wearing his bright red safety band, as officials explained the first event. The gravity-assisted lift tests basic strength, the head judge announced through the universal translator. Each competitor will attempt to lift increasingly heavy weights until they can lift no more. The current record is held by Ambassador Reed at 300 standard units. Tom watched as the first few competitors took their turns. Most struggled with weights around 100 units, their bodies straining against the artificial gravity. The crowd cheered for each successful lift, no matter how small. Ambassador Reed stepped up for his attempt. His crystalline form sparkled as he positioned himself under the reinforced bar. With visible effort, he managed to lift 305 units, setting a new record. The crowd erupted in applause. "A magnificent achievement," the announcer declared. "Surely this record will stand for." Next competitor, Tom Wilson, Earth. Another official cut in, voice slightly nervous. The arena fell silent as Tom walked to the lifting area. The reinforced bar looked almost comically thick, designed to handle forces far beyond what the aliens considered normal. Tom gripped it, noting how the metal felt cool against his palms. "Starting weight?" the judge asked. 300 units, Tom said quietly. Gasps echoed through the arena. Even the judges looked startled. That's nearly the record," one of them stuttered. "Are you sure you wouldn't prefer to start lower?" Tom shook his head. 300 units, please. The gravity modulators hummed to life, creating the specified weight. Tom took a deep breath, gripped the bar properly, and lifted. The massive weight came up smoothly, as easily as if he were lifting a grocery bag. The silence in the arena deepened. Tom held the weight steady, not even trembling. Higher, he said calmly. Add another 100 units. The judges, too shocked to argue, adjusted the controls. 400 units, far beyond the previous record, settled onto the bar in Tom's hands. He didn't flinch. More, he said again. 500 units, 600, 700. Tom kept lifting, his movements steady and controlled. The crowd had gone from silence to murmurs to outright shouting. Several scientists were frantically checking their instruments, convinced they must be malfunctioning. At 800 units, Tom finally showed signs of effort. A bead of sweat rolled down his forehead as he completed the lift. He carefully set the weight down, the reinforced floor creaking slightly under the impact. I think that's enough for now, he said, trying to sound modest. Don't want to damage any equipment. Ambassador Reed stood motionless, his crystalline face unreadable. Other competitors were backing away, some already withdrawing from their events. The judges huddled together, speaking in urgent whispers. Finally, the head judge stepped forward. The record is now 800 standard units, they announced, voice shaking slightly. Set by Tom Wilson of Earth. This is impossible, someone in the crowd shouted. He must be using enhancement technology. The medical team quickly surrounded Tom, their scanners whirring. After several minutes, the lead doctor turned to the crowd. No enhancements detected, they announced. This is natural human strength, adapted to our lower gravity environment. Tom stood quietly as chaos erupted in the arena. He could hear officials arguing about creating new weight categories, scientists demanding study opportunities, and competitors frantically discussing what this meant for future competitions. And this was just the first event. The main challenges were still to come. After a 2-hour delay for emergency reinforcement of the equipment, the arena was even more packed than before. News of Tom's performance in the initial events had spread across the station like wildfire. Every species on Station Alpha wanted to see the legendary World Bearer's Weight Challenge. The World Bearer's Weight, the announcer's voice boomed, is our most sacred trial of strength. Legend says it represents the force needed to move a small moon. Tom stood in the center of the arena, looking at the massive apparatus before him. Unlike the previous equipment, this was ancient, a relic passed down through generations. Its dark metal surface was carved with symbols from 100 different civilizations. The current record, the announcer continued, stands at 400 standard units, set 50 years ago. No one has even attempted it since then. Ambassador Reed approached Tom, his crystalline form dimmer than usual. Human, he said quietly, there is no shame in not attempting this. Many great champions have chosen to simply admire the world bearer's weight from a distance. Tom smiled at the alien champion. Thank you for your concern, Ambassador, but I'd like to try. The crowd grew silent as Tom stepped onto the lifting platform. Ancient gravity generators hummed to life, their deep tone vibrating through the station's structure. The safety officials had triple-checked everything, adding emergency force fields around the area. Starting weight, the ancient judge asked, his 6 eyes blinking nervously. Tom looked at the carved numbers showing the previous record. He took a deep breath. 1,000 standard units, he said clearly. The arena exploded in shocked voices. The judge's 6 eyes all widened at once. That is more than double the existing record. It's never been tested at such levels. The equipment can handle it, Tom assured them. I checked the specifications myself, and I'd rather not waste time working up to it. After several minutes of urgent discussions among the officials, they agreed. The ancient machinery groaned as it was set to a weight no one had ever attempted before. Tom gripped the handles of the world bearer's weight. The metal was warm, almost alive under his hands. He could feel thousands of years of history, of champions from across the galaxy who had tested themselves against this ancient challenge. He lifted. For the first time since arriving at the station, Tom felt real resistance. The weight lived up to its name, fighting against him with what felt like genuine gravity from a massive object. Sweat broke out on his forehead as he continued to lift. The crowd watched in complete silence as the weight slowly rose from its resting place. Tom's muscles strained, his teeth clenched, but he didn't stop. Inch by inch, the ancient device rose until Tom held it at full extension above his head. The judge's voice shook as he called out, "The lift is successful. New record, 1,000 standard units." The arena remained silent for 3 heartbeats. Then it exploded. Beings of all species jumped, flew, or floated in celebration. Scientists fainted at their monitoring stations. Several religious officials began praying to their various deities. Tom carefully lowered the weight back to its resting place. His arms trembled slightly, not from exhaustion, but from the sheer rush of accomplishment. He had just lifted the equivalent of a small hill in Earth terms. Ambassador Reed was the first to approach him, all protocol forgotten. The crystalline being's voice rang with genuine awe. "In all our records, across all our histories, no one has ever. You must be the strongest being in the known galaxy." Tom rubbed his hands together, still feeling the ancient weight's energy in them. "Actually," he said with a small smile, "back on Earth, I only ranked 3rd in my city's construction workers' league." The silence that followed that statement was the loudest thing Tom had ever heard. The next day, Station Alpha was in complete chaos. The main halls were packed with reporters from every corner of the galaxy, all trying to get an interview with the human who had changed everything. Tom sat in a hastily prepared conference room, surrounded by officials, scientists, and diplomats. "You say there are humans even stronger than you?" asked a jellyfish-like reporter, its tentacles waving in excitement. "How is this possible?" Tom nodded. "Sure. Professional athletes, specialized lifters, even some of my coworkers back home. I'm just an average guy who keeps in shape for work." The room erupted in questions again. The bird alien official who had first registered Tom was now in charge of crowd control, its feathers permanently ruffled from stress. "Please, please," it chirped loudly. "One question at a time." A tall, tree-like being rose up. "The Federation Sports Council has an urgent announcement," it said, branches swaying. "We are creating a new division specifically for high-gravity species. All previous records will be maintained in their own category." Tom watched as Ambassador Reed floated forward. The crystalline being had changed since yesterday. His blue color was brighter, more confident. As the former overall champion, Reed announced, "I fully support this decision. It would be foolish to ignore the physical advantages that evolution on a high-gravity world provides. We must adapt our competitions accordingly." Suddenly, the room's main screen lit up with an incoming transmission. Tom recognized the Earth logo. It was the first official communication from his home planet since his victory. "This is the Earth Sports Federation." A woman's voice came through clearly. "We are proud to announce that we will be sending a proper athletic delegation to Station Alpha within the month. We look forward to participating in all upcoming events." The aliens in the room looked at each other nervously. One brave soul raised a tentacle. Are they all like you?" they asked Tom. Tom rubbed the back of his neck. "Well, like I said, many are actually stronger. The athletes they're sending are probably—" He was cut off by the sound of several aliens fainting. The tree-like official quickly stepped in. "We will need to completely redesign our training facilities and the competition equipment, and possibly reinforce parts of the station itself. I might be able to help with that," Tom offered. "Construction is my job, after all." This led to another round of excited discussion. Scientists were already drawing up plans for new gravity-adjusted training areas. Engineers were debating how to build equipment that could handle human-level strength. Representatives from various worlds were frantically sending messages back to their governments. A small alien child, who had somehow snuck into the conference room, floated up to Tom's chair. "Mr. Human," it squeaked, "can you lift me up? I want to see what it feels like to be strong." The room fell silent, everyone holding their breath. Tom looked at the child's parent for permission, and after receiving a nervous nod, he very gently lifted the small alien up. The child's delighted laughter broke the tension in the room. Soon, other aliens were cautiously approaching Tom, asking questions about Earth, about humans, about what it was like to live in such high gravity. Ambassador Reed watched all this with his faceted eyes. "Perhaps," he said thoughtfully, "being a Deathworlder isn't such a terrible thing after all. It seems we have much to learn from each other." Tom smiled as he carefully set the child back down. In just 2 days, he had gone from being feared as a dangerous creature to being celebrated as a breakthrough in galactic sports. And this was just the beginning. Once the real athletes arrived from Earth, the galaxy would need to redefine their understanding of physical capability all over again. But for now, he was happy to be building bridges between worlds, one careful handshake at a time. 1 year had passed since Tom Wilson first stepped onto Station Alpha. The station itself had changed dramatically. New reinforced sections had been added, specially designed to handle the strength of Earth's athletes. The training areas now had gravity controls that could simulate everything from light asteroid conditions to Earth normal gravity. Tom stood in his new office, looking out at the stars through the same window he'd first gazed through a year ago. But now, instead of being asked to step away, he wore the official badge of Earth's first Athletic Council representative. Representative Wilson called a familiar chirping voice. The bird alien official, now his personal assistant, hurried in with a tablet. "The new records are officially confirmed." Tom smiled as he looked at the numbers. In just 1 year, human athletes had established themselves in every strength-based competition. But instead of causing resentment, it had sparked a revolution in galactic sports. "The multi-gravity championships are starting next week," his assistant continued excitedly. "We have athletes from 27 different gravity levels competing." The new championship system had been Tom's idea. Instead of separating species completely, they competed in weight-adjusted categories based on their home world's gravity. It gave everyone a fair chance to showcase their abilities. Ambassador Reed floated into the office, his crystalline form now adorned with the markings of the Sports Federation's High Council. "Tom, my friend," he chimed warmly. "Have you seen the latest enrollment numbers?" Tom nodded toward a holographic display showing statistics. Participation in galactic sports had tripled since the introduction of the new system. Species that had never competed before were joining in, proud to demonstrate their unique adaptations. "And the cultural exchange program?" Reed asked. "Better than we hoped," Tom replied. 50 Earth athletes are currently training on low-gravity worlds, teaching local coaches about our exercise methods. And we have 30 alien trainers on Earth, helping our athletes master low-gravity techniques. The station's warning system beeped softly, announcing the arrival of another ship. Through his window, Tom watched as the massive vessel docked. It was Earth's newest contribution to the galactic community, a dedicated sports training ship designed to simulate any gravity level from any known world. "Did you ever imagine," his assistant asked, "when you first arrived here, that one simple competition would change so much?" Tom thought back to that first day, when everyone had been afraid to even stand near him. Now, the term Deathworlder had become a mark of respect, not fear. Humans were sought after as trainers, engineers, and competition designers. "The best part," Ambassador Reed said, his crystalline form glowing with pride, "is how it's affecting the younger generations. Did you see the interspecies children's sports program?" Tom smiled broadly at that. The program showed young aliens and human children learning to play together, each adapting to the other's physical differences. It was exactly what he'd hoped for, understanding growing through shared experience. A small alert popped up on his desk. The World Bearer's weight was being retired to a museum, replaced by new equipment that could handle the full range of galactic strength levels. Tom's record would stand forever as the last lift on the ancient device. Time for the newcomer orientation, his assistant reminded him. Tom nodded and stood up. Another group of Earth athletes had arrived, ready to join the galactic sports community. But more importantly, a dozen other species were arriving too, each bringing their own unique abilities and traditions to share. As he walked through the station's halls, aliens of all kinds greeted him warmly. Children waved, some wearing shirts with Earth's gravity rating proudly displayed. Scientists and engineers nodded respectfully, their work forever changed by the introduction of human physical capabilities. Tom Wilson, the construction worker who had changed galactic sports forever, smiled to himself. Sometimes the strongest thing you could do wasn't lifting weights, it was building bridges between worlds. And that was exactly what he had done.